Voters in Antigua and Barbuda are heading to the polls to choose a new government in a general election. Prime Minister Gaston Brown called for a year ahead of the constitutional deadline. More than 51,000 voters are eligible to cast their ballots. 168 polling stations open at 6 in the morning and will close late in the afternoon. Voters from the sister island of Barbuda are casting their votes in Antigua for the first time. There are 7 political parties and 5 independents standing for the 17 seats in Parliament. The main fight is between the ruling Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party, or ABLP, and the main opposition United Progressive Party, also known as UPP. But let's take a closer look at what is at stake in the Antigua and Barbuda elections. Prime Minister Gaston Brown is the leader of the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party. He's been Prime Minister since 2014. He called elections early. They weren't due until next year. His party is the only one contesting all 17 seats, and he is the favorite to win. Harold Lovell is a former finance minister who's now heading the opposition United Progressive Party. This will be his first contestant as a political leader. The UPP is contesting 16 seats, and it's formed an alliance with the Barbuda People's Movement to contest the 17th. He's accused of raising borrowing while a minister. Joanne Masayay is a former Minister of Agriculture and former member of the UPP. She broke away and formed the Democratic National Alliance in 2017. She's an attorney by profession and a strong advocate for women's rights. Her party is contesting 13 seats. There are approximately 51,500 registered voters on both islands.
Antigua and Barbuda is an idyllic twin island nation in the Caribbean, with a population of 100,000 persons scattered across 108 kilometers. It is no surprise that the country's main economic driver is tourism.
We have lovely beaches, we have lovely hotels, and we have lovely people down here, so that's basically much it for Antigua.
Climate change has created a very dangerous reality for the Caribbean, which is why Prime Minister Gaston Brown says he wants Antigua and Barbuda to become a climate-resilient country. There are several political parties vying for the attention of the public, but the race is really between the governing Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party and its main rival, the United Progressive Party.
I think our labor codes were upgraded to accommodate storms of that strength. I think since Irma, because Irma was like a mega storm, that now I'll probably have to think of ways to upgrade them. And our Prime Minister has already spoke about ways we're going to go forward with doing things like that. There isn't anything we can do to fight Mother Nature. The only thing we can do is to be as prepared as we possibly can be. And I think that we're already on course for that.
Prime Minister Gaston Brown remains convinced that the ABLP is the party that will serve the people best. During his final pre-election press conference, he explained how, in their 3.5 years in power, they were able to repay some of their most onerous debts.
Today, I am pleased to confirm that we have given instructions to the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank today to make the final payment to the IMF. It's a payment of $12 million EC, which will retire that $320 million loan in its entirety.
The Prime Minister says his administration practices fiscal responsibility, not austerity. And that means more money to allow for a better quality of life for people.
I used to be with the UPP, but because of their wickedness and their evilness, I have to run left them and join this party. And since I joined this party, trust me, red mean bread. So I'm well taken care of. Thank you.
The Caribbean Development Research Service, or CADRES, has predicted a win for the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is predicting that his ABLP will take all 17 seats in the Parliament.
On election day, the people of Antigua and Barbuda told us they have 2 very main important concerns. One, are they going to stay with the Gaston Brown-led Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party, or are they going to choose hope, which is what the United Progressive Party say they offer? Because they say the government is not hearing their concerns and is not responding to their cries. So we're going to see what choices the people have to make on election day. But right now, that's it for me. Soini Gray here in Antigua and Barbuda for teleSUR English.
And Soini Gray is in Antigua and Barbuda for special coverage and joins us live. Hello, Soini. Polls have opened. What are we expecting from today's election?
can't see these shots of the...
We're having a technical issue with our correspondent, but we'll be back anytime soon. More news now. Members of Congress in Peru are calling on President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski to step down immediately before an impeachment vote on Thursday. This after videos were released on Tuesday, allegedly showing the government trying to buy votes against the impeachment from some politicians. Government ministers claimed the video were a setup.
There is no high-level official that represents the government and could make this kind of offer, which we ignore and do not accept. There is no monetary grant which used to happen in Montesino's era. They are boastful talks.
This is a Montesinista ambush, and we have to be extra clear. They are trying to ruin President Kuczynski at any rate, and we cannot permit it. We cannot fall to the miserable level of political management.
Even before those videos were released, there were accusations that supporters of President Kuczynski had offered lawmakers public work projects in exchange for help defeating his upcoming impeachment motion.
2 days before the congressional vote that appears set to remove President Kuczynski from power, congressmen from Fuerza Popular say they have received offerings from the government in exchange for votes against presidential impeachment proceedings.
This is evident. They are offering me contracts in exchange for my vote.
The first time he came here personally and then insisted on the phone, but he said he was testing me.
Fuerza Popular claim that the people behind this are congressmen linked to Kenji, Alberto Fujimori's younger son, who also offered cash for votes.
They first approached some members of Congress and offered $200,000, as well as contracts. But in the phone calls to ministers, they didn't mention the money, obviously, because they could be recorded.
Some have compared these strategies to those used during the Fujimori dictatorship. While Congress states that votes will be allocated in blocks or individually, people in the streets keep protesting against the Peruvian political class.
Take them all out. All of them have robbed the same.
Which one will come after PPK? It's going to be the same. We will be worse.
This is a mafia. They want all the money and power just to waste it for themselves.
Congress will vote on March 22nd. Civil society groups will organize protests and will keep an eye on the actions of Congress members.
Corruption cases have been chasing Peruvian President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski for a long time. A report from the Financial Intelligence Unit of Peru has outlined how he would have received millions from Odebrecht while he was a minister and a presidential candidate between 2005 and 2016. Critics believe Kuczynski must be removed from office before the Summit of the Americas this weekend, as he is not able to debate with other heads of state about corruption issues.
According to the report sent to the Lava Jato Commission of the Congress, companies linked to Odebrecht would have made transfers of over $9 million to bank accounts of Pedro Pablo Kuczynski. Analysts consider that Kuczynski has committed a crime.
He received money from 2005 to 2016, when he was Minister of Economy and a presidential candidate. Companies linked to him or his friends received money from the state's suppliers.
According to specialist Carlos Bedoya, the report specifies the root of the corruption money. They would also buy Kuczynski a house valued at $1 million in Lima and credit card use. A lot of these transactions were made through tax havens.
We have here the Virgin Islands, Grand Cayman, Delaware, that are tax havens. And when asked about why he does transactions through tax havens, he says to not pay taxes, to pay less taxes. That is a crime here and in the United States, where the headquarters of these companies are. So the president's situation is tough.
For the legislators, it's a decisive document because it verifies the corruption cases that involve the president and are enough for the Congress to dismiss him from office on March 22nd. The legislators also point out that this is only the tip of the iceberg.
What the bank superintendency has reported is the same that banks have reported, like unusual deposits. But it hasn't investigated all the banking information of all the people involved. When this happened, things are going to get worse.
The legislators that support the dismissal of the president state that Pedro Pablo Kuczynski must be removed from office before the Summit of the Americas. because he doesn't have the moral authority to debate with other heads of state of the region about corruption issues.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Demonstrations keep taking place throughout Brazil in honor of slain councilwoman Marielle Franco. Thousands took to the streets in Franco's hometown of Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo to protest the murder of Rio's councilwoman last week. Marielle Franco was a leader in a number of simultaneous struggles on the front line fighting against racism, poverty, gender violence, and against all forms of oppression. She was shot dead last Wednesday alongside Anderson Gomez in what her supporters believe was an execution, and citizens are demanding justice.
In the name of everyone who has been a victim, for whom Marielle had fought for, we are here united not for violence, but to say that we fight for life.
Our correspondent in Brazil, Ignacio Lemos, was there and brings us the latest.
17 states and 23 municipalities in Brazil mobilized today because of the murder of community leader and Rio de Janeiro's councillor, Marielle Franco. She was also an activist for women and Afro-Brazilian rights. She was killed last Wednesday night. This murder is believed to have been planned. Franco was the spokeswoman of the commission in charge of reporting the military's actions since Temer imposed military intervention in Rio. Mobilizations include human rights organizations and Brazilian society, which not only includes Afro-Brazilian groups and favelas, but also middle-class citizens who want to end the military intervention in Rio. You can see behind me an event organized by teachers, protesting against pension reform imposed by Sao Paulo's mayor, João Doria, and Michel Temer. It looks like a separate event, but it has a lot to do
have been arrested in São Lourenço in the southeastern state of Minas Gerais while demonstrating. The women were protesting right in front of as the company has interest in Brazilian water exploitation. Earlier this year, Michel Temer and Nestlé President Paul Bucle met to discuss the exploitation reserve that covers Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay. G20 finance ministers and central bankers agenda dominated by tension over Trump's report from Edgardo Esteban.
Te saludamos y también saludamos a toda la audiencia de teleSUR y en esta segunda jornada.
the future of work and education in order to reduce poverty. On the agenda now, the great debate is the position of China and the European Union with relation to recent announcements which will provide benefits to both steel and aluminum from the United States, generating a situation of tension and inciting a trade war that will
Family members of 21 political prisoners in Honduras have demonstrated outside the public ministry to demand justice for their loved ones.
Lawyers and family members from the north of the country arrived in Tegucigalpa to demand justice. Arrested during post-electoral protests. Most of the detainees have been accused of crimes like destruction of private property. They've been detained is for opposing President Juan Ortega.
They are innocent. Their only sin is not wanting this dictatorship. We want freedom, so we ask the president to be mindful. We ask him not to torture innocent people.
They tell us that to see their relatives
It took me a while to see him again because I needed a license to go in. He was a breadwinner and I didn't have any money. I didn't have a
Campaigners complain of a flawed legal process, baseless accusations, and fixed trials that are meant to terrorize people.
These are trifling crimes and must be judged as such, not with temporary imprisonment because they are not serious crimes. Citizens can rectify the damage done if it can be proved they are guilty in the first place.
Government authorities have denied having any political prisoners, saying that criminals currently jailed are responsible for minor crimes.
By a roadside bomb near the border with Colombia. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. British data analytics firm Cambridge Analytica and social media company Facebook are at the center of a huge controversy after media reports claim that they breached privacy data of 50 million users. Lawmakers in the US and Europe have called for an investigation into the two companies. Cambridge Analytica is best known for assisting the 2016 presidential campaign of US President Donald Trump. The data mining company, through a quiz on Facebook, voter profiles for US and UK political ad campaigns. There has been no response from Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg. Now let's look at some other stories from around the world.
At least 36 people have been killed in the suburb of Syrian capital Damascus by a rocket attack. The attack hit a busy marketplace full of shoppers. According to the Syrian state media Sana, the attack was carried out by the rebels. In another deadly bombing attack in eastern Ghouta, around 40 people were killed. The government has been trying to bring the rebels to the negotiating table and put an end to years of fight in Syria. But so far, both sides haven't found consensus.
I was standing next to the pharmacy and the rocket came down, first hitting the building and then coming down into the market and on the street. Civilians and children here died. The scenes were just simply, may God punish them.
A suspect in a wave of bombing attacks in Austin in the United States has killed himself. The suspect blew an explosive device inside his car when police closed. The latest incident on Tuesday, 2 packages exploded at 2 different FedEx sorting centers in and around the city. US President Donald Trump has met Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Washington to discuss their trade relation. Trump praised Saudi Arabia's investment in the US, including large purchases of US military equipment, which contributed to the creation of 40,000 American jobs. The 32-year-old heir to the Saudi kingdom is seen as a forward-looking ruler in his country and abroad. He has been trying to build up his relation with the West and to bring in several reforms in his country.
The Russia poisoning case in the UK continues to feed a diplomatic spat between the two countries. For the latest, here's our correspondent, Pablo Navarrete.
Earlier today, Tuesday, saw around 80 members of the Russian embassy and their families leave the embassy and board a plane as part of the expulsion ordered by British Prime Minister Theresa May to the alleged poisoning of the Russian spy Donald Trump, the US President, as well as the European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker, both congratulated Vladimir Putin for his election victory on Sunday, in which he won another 6-year term as President of Russia with over 76% of the vote. This has caused, these declarations by Trump and Juncker have come in for criticisms from senior members of the Conservative Tory governing party in the UK, who had hoped to have a united front amongst Western leaders with regards to their critiques and blame of Russia in regards to this alleged poisoning, which the Russian government strenuously denies, has denied since the very beginning. And these declarations by the British government and the Russian government had plunged the relations between the two countries to the worst level in a generation. Relatively well, but the last years have seen a number of incidents, with this being the most intense incident, which has plunged relations between the two countries into crisis. So today saw the removal of 80 Russian embassy staff and their families from the country as part of the measures announced by Prime Minister Theresa May in this ongoing situation, which has plunged, as I said, the relations between the two countries to crisis point.